Let's talk supply chain. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Supply Chain. So let's start with a question. With empty trucks proving a growing problem for the transportation industry, trucking leaders want to minimize empty trailer trips to improve costs and efficiency. So according to a recent industry report, what percentage of all trucks on U.S. freeways were empty of goods at any given moment? What do you think? Well, let me know your guesses over on social and keep listening because I'll let you know at the end of the show. So today I'm joined by a company that is powering intelligent logistics with their industry-leading combination of technology, capacity, and partnership. Well, who are they? Well, it's Uber Freight. Uber Freight delivers an end-to-end enterprise suite of logistics solutions to advance supply chains while maximizing savings, visibility, and efficiency. With a proprietary AI-optimized network, dynamic capacity, and expert partnership, Uber Freight thrives in complexity, building new efficiencies at every stage of the journey to help businesses run as intelligently as possible. And today I have two guests for you. We've got Megan Keith, who is a product management leader with deep expertise in logistics and supply chain innovation. And Shawn Piper is a product design leader at the intersection of strategy, AI, and logistics innovation. They're bringing so many great insights to the table today. And so today, Megan, Shawn, and I are going to be talking all about Uber Freight, its evolution and mission for the logistics space. We'll also be talking about the unique way Uber Freight is bridging tech and service, how it's bringing product and design together to build powerful tools that are solving the most complex industry challenges, and why Uber Freight is investing heavily in AI and automation to lead the industry into the future. So welcome to the show, Megan and Shawn.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Sarah. I'll go ahead and kick it off. I'm Megan Keith, product leader at Uber Freight. I work closely with Shawn here cross-functionally to solve shipper problems, building that technology. I have a background in enterprise tech transformations, but love logistics because it's so big and you need to adapt and evolve quite often. So, Shawn?
Yeah, my name's Shawn Piper. I'm Director of Product Design at Uber Freight. I lead design for our shipper-facing and internal operations tools. So you could say my work and my team's work both supports our software platform and our expert services that work on behalf of our shippers. My background is also in enterprise and SaaS software, and I was drawn to logistics because of its complexity and impact. I think it's a space where smart, intuitive tools can really make a difference, and I love simplifying that complexity so transportation teams can move faster and make the better decisions.
Well, it sounds like you both are already passionate about the industry, and I'll tell you, it grabs a hold of you and it probably will not let go. So I'm excited to see where you want to sort of take the industry, where you want to take Uber Freight. And I know that you're both making such an impact in the industry. So let's dive right in. Now, everybody has heard the name, but who exactly is Uber Freight? You've gone through a major evolution over the years, including bringing together deep industry expertise from Transplace with Uber's tech DNA. How do you see that combination driving the way you approach logistics today? Shawn?
Yeah, I think you covered it a little bit in your question. What really distinguishes Uber Freight is its tech innovation and deep logistics experience. So from Uber, we get that fast, iterative product development methodology. We get things like automation technology, market intelligence, intuitive design at scale. And then Transplace brings decades of operational experience and very strong multi-decade customer relationships. And that fusion really means that we're not just building smart tools or interesting technology, we're building tools that work in the real world. So our approach is really kind of to get that balance right of being tech forward, but also kind of operationally grounded. It's helping ultimately to kind of make customers more agile, resilient, and informed.
I love that because we need to bring both of those together, right? We've got some deep industry knowledge that can bring forward and really help create that innovation that I think we need in the industry. Megan, did you have anything you wanted to add there?
Yeah, I just think that, I mean, Uber Freight's mission is really leading with logistics professionals. And I like to highlight like that keyword, like with. I know it's not the biggest one there, but we really go alongside our customers and we take that really seriously. And that's what Sean alluded to, that, the tech plus the services offerings with the customers is really a multiplier for the results and the impact we can get.
Yeah, and that's what this industry is all about. It's all about relationships. It's all about the people who help move things throughout the supply chain, whatever that looks like. And it really comes down to being able to partner with a technology solution and making sure that they understand what it is that like your customers would need. So, in saying that, what type of customers do you typically serve? Like, how do their needs shape the work that you do, and how in turn has that created Uber Freight's mission in the logistics space? Shawn?
Yeah, I mean, we support a very wide range of customers from large, complex enterprises to fast-growing customers in the mid-market space and even down to SMBs. And that really influences our product strategy or our service philosophy in that we're focused on providing flexibility to grow with and adapt with our customers' needs. So, it might be that a shipper is growing through acquisitions or expansion. They might be outgrowing some of the capabilities that they have today, and we're able to kind of turn those things on dynamically, providing just what they need when they need it. So, really want to meet shippers where they are and scale with them.
Yeah, I love the fact that you can scale with them and that you said that you can work with enterprise and small to medium businesses. And depending on what their needs are, you can sort of turn on and turn off some of the capabilities that they may or may not need, which means you can meet them where they are. So I really, really like that. Now, one of the unique things about Uber Freight is how you combine managed services with advanced technology. Why is that blend so important in today's complex logistics environment? And can you share an example for us of how this combination really helped to solve a real operational pain point for a customer? I love stories, so share it with us, Shawn.
Oh, okay. So the tech stuff's really interesting because it brings in that data, automation, and speed. But identifying opportunities and actualizing those opportunities are two different things, right? Or contextualizing those opportunities. And that's where the managed services come in. So we're able to help take those opportunities and change manage those within the shipper's business to make sure that those benefits are being realized. That's a really important part of how we work. So the technology and the services that we provide are working kind of in a loop of continuous improvement together, where we're implementing those opportunities, and then the technology is becoming more efficient as we get feedback from how those services are being applied. And I think where that kind of shows up is maybe an example of like Leaf Home. They're one of our customers. They're a very large home improvement, home accessory company, and they had scaled, I think, from about 28 to 250 plus micro fulfillment centers very rapidly.
Wow.
They were shipping into like I think 87% of zip codes across the U.S. and Canada. And when they came to us, they were kind of at the limits of the technology that they had adopted when they started as a business. So they picked up our TMS in 2023 along with some of our managed services, and pretty quickly we're able to start saving something like 1,000 operational hours. They
Wow.
stopped expanding their headcount. They reduced their full truckload cost by nearly 20%. And most importantly, through all that growth, they were able to maintain their next day installation promise, which is core to their business service.
Yeah, so you were really able to help them deliver that customer experience that they want to deliver to their customers. And that was really important to them. But you also brought in some really cool stats with some really great numbers of how you've reduced some of the costs, but also some of those operational hours without touching efficiency. Megan, did you want to jump in here?
No, I think he pretty much covered it. We've got a ton more of those stories there as well.
Oh, well, I can't wait to dive
Yeah.
into those. So, Megan, I want to ask you and bring you a
Mhm.
little bit more into the conversation because I think when we talk about making high powered tools available to more shippers, how do you ensure that your technology also scales down in a way that's still usable and valuable for mid-sized companies? And why is that scalability and flexibility so central to your model?
Yeah, so I think the thing is logistics is complex, right? But you can't present that complexity to people when they're trying to do their day jobs. You also can't just eliminate that complexity. You can't get it to
Right.
go away, right? And so what we really think about is how you pare that down to functional areas that can support the customer with what they're doing. So let's take one example, optimization or something like that. You're trying to go ahead and optimize your costs or your service, as Shawn was mentioning. Some customers may only use one flavor of that optimization, less than truckload to truckload conversions. But tomorrow you might have extended pressures, you need to reduce costs
Mhm.
further. And so you might need to actually be able to plug in an additional level of complexity to go after targeted auctions or combine those levers together. And so I really think that we think about it in that way of that type of plug and play in these units that really solve the problem at its core,
Mhm.
but make it simpler for users to engage and use our tools because that's critical to then really getting to their goal in the end. Right.
Yeah. Well, and I think, change management or a technology implementation or taking over, like working with a new partner, a new platform, it's only 20% about technology, right? It's 80% that change management piece and how the folks on the
Mhm.
team are going to adopt it and how easy it is for them to understand the platform and sort of get started right away, right? It's not about rigorous training and things like that. People really want to get in there. They want it to be simple. They want to be able to turn things on and off. So I think you did a really great job of explaining that. Shawn, did you have anything to add?
No, I think Megan nailed it.
Love that. All right. So let's talk about how product and design working together. So I'm a big proponent of collaboration as the future of business, right? And so how do product and design work together to tackle some of these complex challenges across the freight ecosystem? What are some of the core principles that you rely on to guide platform development? Megan?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is when you have both in the room, you end up with more thoughtful, more elegant
Yes.
solutions. You don't get the first solution. So I am plus wanting your collaboration there. And then I think from like a platform design perspective, we think about it in those building blocks that I alluded to, something that scales easily without that training and rigor. We also think about how do we simplify things, but like with care and intentionality. You don't want friction, but you want flexibility and control. So you have to include that as well. And then I think another key principle for platform work is really staying future focused. You cannot get complacent. You have to be 5, 10 steps ahead and evolving that platform ahead of change, right? And I would think pulling that all together, you really need to make sure in the end that you're actually focusing on the real customer problems, not just the most obvious ones. And so I think that you have to be incorporating that through the building blocks you're bringing in, through the flexibility control, and through that future focused orientation.
That's kind of where innovation lives, is when we bring different folks from different departments together to talk about what they're doing, what they're thinking, what new ideas can we bring to the table. And maybe they'll work out and maybe they won't. But I think the key to that is creating safe space so that we can foster that innovation and collaboration, right? So, how do you build tools that are powerful enough for complex operations, but then intuitive enough for teams that may not have dedicated logistics tech staff? Now, this is probably one of the bigger questions, right? Because not every company has staff that knows the technology. So, talk to me about this, Shawn.
I think at the core of that is how we understand our customers. So we have kind of a framework that we use internally to kind of analyze and position customers in a multidimensional way. both looking at how they scale in terms of freight under management, but also the degree of outsourcing that they want to do to us, the degree of service they need from us. Also, aspects like the degree of integration or specialty within their industry that they're in. And that, like, kind of looking at that framework, we're kind of able to tease out natural step points within the functionality and service offerings where we can kind of turn on or turn off different capabilities. So we're not sewing too much to a given customer. But even against that framework, right, as Megan was talking about earlier, our system is just inherently modular. So if someone needs something that's in addition to what we might provide within one of these kind of standard recommendations, we can kind of add those additional capabilities on. And of course, our teams are there to dial up the degree of support that shipper needs to get them trained on that product or to support that function if it's needed.
So would you say it's pretty customizable then to really what the customer wants and needs?
It is, but it's also supported with, I think, decades of experience that have kind of manifest as best practices that we try and get shippers into. And those
Hmm.
best practices allow us to kind of measure more precisely how the work we're doing positively affects their transportation network and then iterate on that. And it also allows us to kind of bring in technology in a really targeted way to
Hmm.
make sure that we're kind of amplifying how we're serving those customers.
Okay, I like that because sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right? So you're coming
Yeah.
in, you want something to be customized, but then if you're bringing some of that expertise to the table and some of those best practices to say, hey, I hear what you're saying, but we think that you can optimize a little bit differently if you do it this way or use this particular module over this one, right? And
Yeah,
I think that's how you have the conversation and how you gain trust from the customer as well.
absolutely.
All right. So, Megan, how does customer feedback shape your roadmap? I've been talking about this a lot lately, like feedback loops and making sure that you've got those feedback loops in place and that people feel safe to provide that feedback, but then you're actually taking that feedback and putting it into action. And I'm sure you get a lot of feedback. I mean, you're serving both large enterprises and emerging mid-market players. So, what role does usability play when you're designing tools for logistics professionals and maybe that feedback loop?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I will plus one is the fact that that feedback and engaging customers is important. I think recognizing that they come from the position as experts in their business is really how you have to start the conversation. While we may bring in some expertise and, decades of experience from our logistics professionals and working with enterprise customers, they come with the goals. And so we do this actually in a number of different ways. One that I think Shawn and I are particularly passionate about are our design partnerships, where we actually bring a customer in at the beginning of ideation and going through the entire problem space. And so what that would look like is having research conversations with them, showing them early visual designs of what we are working on, collecting that feedback, and really partnering closely with them. And we do that with a diverse group of customers. And then, as you mentioned, right, we're doing this with big and small. So there's a ton of feedback. But I think what Shawn was alluding to is that in many ways, the feedback from both of those houses complement one another, right? So the enterprise and the history brings decades old of experience. Sometimes those mid-market scrappy teams that really have to get a lot done with less really push you like the extra mile and encourage the end result of our product to balance both of those pieces. So we're able to present a different lens from those different segments. And really, as we were talking about usability and, it needs to be easy to use and train, like you have to simplify that experience. And we have so many people using our tools from, the executive looking for insights to an operational manager that we really spend a lot of deep time understanding what customers are doing, what are they trying to do, what each dimension that Shawn mentioned is trying to do to reduce that friction and streamline all of those workflows. And then we collect additional iterative information, right? You get metrics, you get a number of other things. And we bring that full circle kind of with additional future design partnerships, next research opportunities. So really it just like is always going on. And we love hearing customer feedback too much is a great thing, actually.
Well, I'd love to be a fly on the wall for those discussions. I mean, it
Yeah.
sounds like I can see why the both of you are passionate about that. It sounds like so much fun. I mean, you're kind of designing and problem solving, and really, supply chain professionals are inherent problem solvers and they get excited about it. So I'm sure that's probably one of those times where you get together with a customer and they're like, okay, let's do this because now I can really visualize what it is that we're having a challenge with and how can we really design this and fit everything together so that we can really make an impact on, our internal teams and that customer experience as well. So I mentioned at the beginning of this episode that Uber Freight is investing heavily in AI and automation. What are some of the ways you're using these technologies to empower smarter, faster decisions? I mean, we can't really talk about this without talking about AI because it's kind of the word du jour. So Megan, talk to us about that.
Yeah, so I think one thing to call out is Uber Freight, it's AI and automation have really been part of our DNA for a long time, both as Transplace and Uber Freight came together. That first kind of started out with a lot of marketplace intelligence. How do I make the optimal cost decision? Or, how do I want to service this particular customer with the right amount, right capacity, those correct decisions there. But really, that built into automations throughout the order to cash cycle, right? Things like scheduling, things like making sure something's ready for the marketplace. That even further evolved into disruption, right? How do we do recovery options and provide those with limited kind of requirements from those, maybe those mid-market customers who don't have the time to go in there? That's not their primary goal. You want to have some of those disruptions managed automatically, right? And so I think that has always been a great part of kind of us as Uber Freight. But I want to call out like one thing, which is that really developing that with the guardrails that honor the business goals is something that, is really critical and crucial, especially as we're now thinking about moving into the AI space, right? I am super excited because we're beginning to weave AI throughout and more deeply into tools, right? Just simple things like finding what you need to, summarizing information, doing data analysis. Those are much easier so you can do your work smarter and faster, things that weren't accessible to you before. And I think in particular, what is incredibly interesting about AI right now is the ability to bring more information into every day and your strategic decisions, right? And why do I think that's, a huge unlock in the future? I think that's going to be able to have logistics professionals set more ambitious goals, right? But not only set those goals, it'll tie to those everyday decisions that are actually facilitating that change. So it makes it, you can go further, but you actually are more likely to actually hit that goal. And so I really just think, particularly in that area, we're just scratching the surface to how we're going to continue to incorporate those technologies for like this iterative accelerant towards larger goals for the industry.
Yeah. Well, and I think you said it earlier, Shawn said it earlier, you're meeting the customer where they are, right? And not everybody is ready to take AI all the way at the moment. And so you're kind of meeting them there, but you're also talking or thinking about how you can implement it in increments so that everybody does get comfortable with how you can use it and how it's going to optimize the way that they're making decisions towards their goals, which I really like. And I like the fact that it can summarize too, because I think we've got a lot of information. We've got a lot of stuff coming at us as supply chain professionals, supply chain leaders. And the summaries is really, really important right now. And I know a lot of chief supply chain officers who are thinking that way and really utilizing a summarization model as well. So, Shawn, can you tell us more about Insights AI? Like, what makes it a game changer for logistics teams? And again, how do you make sure that AI driven capabilities don't just serve the largest shippers, but also help smaller teams punch above their weight?
Yeah, I think what makes Insights AI game changer is that it actually interprets the data, it understands it, it doesn't just visualize it. So it's not just a better version of Tableau. And because of that, it's able to kind of identify patterns, flag risks, proactively recommend actions, and things like that on an ongoing basis, which shifts teams more to proactive management rather than reactive firefighting.
Right.
And I think what is interesting about it for like a smaller shipper is that typically when a small shipper might not have the budget to pay for a full-time analyst, they might not have somebody in their team who has the background to be able to interpret freight data. So our AI tool allows people to query their or search or view or explore their freight data in a much more natural, intuitive way. And if they're asking questions and those questions aren't quite right, the system will even respond back and make recommendations to help get them there. So it's really about assisting our customers who might not have that freight background and offering it at a price point that's accessible
Yeah.
to those types of customers.
Yeah, I love that accessible price point. I think that that's really, really important to companies across the board so that they can also have the competitive advantage that they need as well. So, Shawn, what do you think the future of freight technology looks like? How do you see Uber Freight leading that charge?
Yeah, I think um, it's definitely I think connecting a lot of these different islands of automation into more kind of systemic automation. It's a shift away from just efficiency, which I think has been kind of the historical role of automation within supply chain, to more around effectiveness, about identifying and realizing some of the optimizations that can occur. So I think like tactically how that might show up is you could start to see, everything from the supply chain engineering level all the way down to the supply chain execution level being orchestrated or assisted by AI, aligning kind of people, process, and technology through
Wow.
that stack. And I think that just makes supply chains much more reactive and resilient to change. Yeah.
Well, making it more transparent and
Yeah.
bringing everything a little bit closer together, which is kind of what we need, right? Traditionally, this industry has been very siloed. And so that's why I always talk about collaboration, how we can bring everybody together. But you're even taking that further in how we can have them work a lot more closely together with that transparency that kind of everybody needs, right?
Yeah, and I think our people are definitely in that mix too. I mean, it's one thing for a system to identify a change, but in the real world, that change has to be implemented by people. So I think we see these technologies really empowering our teams and our customers' teams to more effectively roll some of these things out in their own organizations.
Yes, you hit it on the head. It has to be realistic, right? The
Yeah.
change has to be realistic and it has to make realistic impact. Otherwise, people will not use it. So I love that you said that. Now, last but not least, we're coming to our last question. What's one key takeaway you want shippers or industry leaders to walk away with from today's conversation? Like, where can our listeners go to learn more or get in touch with Uber Freight? Megan, I'm going to start with you and then we'll go to Shawn.
Yeah, sounds great. So I think one thing that I believe is important is that it's not kind of an either and or, like, you're here in the supply chain and then oh, you're into new technologies and it's, you're either moving or not.
Right.
I really think that the winners within the logistics space are going to figure out how to bring that historical context, that data, that information, the relationships, all of that information into that technical shift. And that's even more feasible with how much information we're able to process now. So I really think that that will be a very powerful accelerator, like a willingness to engage with the technology, but knowing what of your identity and your like key focus as a business and your data to bring into that.
Love that. Shawn, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think adding to what Megan put there, I think logistics is becoming more intelligent, more adaptive, more connective. I think the winners in the space will be those who embrace that shift early, utilizing partners like us to help lead through that change, not just survive it. So, yeah, I think it's really about the partnership.
Awesome. Well, transportation is tough, but with Uber Freight's advanced logistics technology at your fingertips, reliable capacity where and when you need it, and access to experienced supply chain leaders, you can optimize every aspect of your supply chain, maximizing savings, visibility, and efficiency to drive your business into the future. So, did you have a guess at today's big question? Well, at the top of the show, I asked you, according to a recent industry report, what percentage of all trucks on US freeways were empty of goods at any given moment? Well, it's around 35%. Now, that's a big number when you're thinking about cost and efficiency. So AI optimization with Uber Freight could really alter the bottom line for your business. If you want to find out more, you can check them out at uberfreight.com. A massive thanks to the team at Uber Freight for making this episode happen. And Megan and Shawn, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.